The opinion with Michael J. An appeals court has blocked the ruling to block the Trump's tariffs. So here we go, main screen.
Breaking news into CNN. A court decision now injecting even more whiplash into President Donald Trump's trade war. A federal appeals court has paused last night's ruling from the Court of International Trade that blocked President Trump's tariffs. Joining us now to discuss is Joe Weisenthal. He's the co-host of Bloomberg's Odd Lots podcast. Joe, thanks for being with us. What do we know about this appeals court decision?
It's just incredible. It's funny because with every headline...
It is friggin' incredible. Absolutely. So now we're going to go to Michael Popout. Take it away there, Michael.
News about tariffs, the T word, as Donald Trump would like to say. He's got a loss by Judge Contreras in the District of Columbia about some individual tariffs on Chinese opioids and things like that, fresh on the heels of last night's decision by the Court of International Trade. But we have an administrative stay by the Federal Circuit, that specialty appellate court that sits in the District of Columbia, giving them time to read all the papers about whether Donald Trump will be successful in overturning the complete block of his retaliatory tariffs by that Court of International Trade. What is an administrative stay? Does it mean they've made a ruling on the substance of the issue? Why did so many judges join together in issuing the administrative stay? And does it mean anything about the ultimate decision that they're going to make? I'm going to answer all those questions and more right here on the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. How'd we get here? Donald Trump dragged a case from a federal judge that he didn't like over to the Court of International Trade in New York. 3-judge panel, that's how they do things there, made a ruling late last night against him and ruled that he unconstitutionally imposed retaliatory tariffs. He doesn't have that power. Only Congress has that power. And Congress, while it can delegate, the court said, it has to delegate with clear limits and guidelines. It can't be limitless. And Donald Trump doesn't have the power under that or under a International Economic Emergencies Procedures Act, we call it IEPA, line of cases and statute. That's where we were last night. Donald Trump immediately appealed by filing a notice of appeal with a specialty appellate court, also Article 3 under the Constitution that sits in D.C., called the Federal Circuit Court of Appeal. It only handles things like patents and trademarks and things related to the economy and tariffs and technology, all in one court. It's got about 11 members. Hold that number in your head. So he files the notice, right? He doesn't skip the step and go to the Supreme Court like his usual behavior. While we're waiting to see if the court, who's been asked by Trump to issue a stay, whether they're going to enter a stay, at least temporarily, in other words, block the decision by the Court of International Trade to tear down the tariffs, right? While we were waiting for that, which has now happened, Judge Rudy Contreras, a judge that sits in D.C., had a whole nother tariff case in front of him about Chinese opioids and all sorts of things related to China that were imposed by Donald Trump pursuant to some other law. And similarly, Contreras said, no, you don't have the right to issue those tariffs. And so we had another loss for Donald Trump related to that before we even got to the federal circuit. For instance, in particular, this is what the judge said in that case. It's a relatively short order. Here it is now. And there's a separate order that was granted, but this is the gist. The tariffs deriving from an executive order imposing duties to address the synthetic opioid supply chain, the People's Republic of China, and other reciprocal tariffs, in all really related to China, they would be under the International Economic Emergency. Under the International Economic Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA. The judge found that IEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs pursuant to those orders. He's therefore preliminarily enjoined from collecting any tariffs, and that shall be, now he's allowing them, he's staying it to allow the parties to seek review in another court of appeals, in this case, the DC Court of Appeals, not the Federal Circuit, where we are related to the decision by the Court of International Trade. Now, on the heels of that, hours later, we just got the ruling from the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in almost all the judges, 10 out of the 11 judges. So they got together en banc and they made a decision. And the decision is they're going to grant an administrative stay. An administrative stay is the lowest level of injunction that a court can grant. It's usually done without even reviewing any of the documents or the record, but the stay does hold the ring and block the order of the court, the international court, the Court of International Trade, until they, at the higher level, their bosses, have an opportunity to look at all the papers.
So the bottom line, folks, is the win that was thought to have happened with the overturning of the tariffs being unlawful has obviously been appealed by Trump, and there's two tranches of appeals here, and they're stayed for now, lowest level administrative stay, and just waiting upon further review, and we'll see what happens, and this could take a little while. So this is basically what Mr. Popak's saying here now.
So they set a briefing schedule. They want to look at the briefing schedule. They're going to consolidate to appeal. So it's all about one set of briefs. They'll set an oral argument at some point. In the meantime, they don't want to be pressured by the Court of International Trade's order. So they put it on ice. It doesn't mean that that Trump's ultimately going to win. It's a relatively neutral, Gnostic, if you will, decision by a court. Happens all the time. They're not looking under the hood. They're not looking at the substance or the merits, what we say, the merits of the appeal. They will. At that point, they may convert the administrative stay into a temporary restraining order or a stay that will last throughout the appeal. Or they might say, no, we don't think you have the grounds for a stay. It's an extraordinary set of relief to ask for from an appellate court. We'll do your appeal, but we're going to let the tariffs come down. My gut is they're going to block the order tearing down the tariffs until they've had a chance to fully understand it on appeal, because they're going to argue, this is just their argument, I'm sure, the court's going to argue, well, we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube if all the tariffs are torn down, and then we rule that was wrong. It's very hard to impose them again. It's diplomatic and economic chaos.
Yeah, you just can't keep bouncing that friggin' ball back and forth across the court in a constant volley. So you have to, so this is what's going to happen. The order removing the tariffs is going to be stayed for a while until oral arguments have heard for the merits of the case to find out what type of stay will go into place. And that's really the essence of what we're discussing here at this point. Now let's move to another one here. Former GOP senator, which means Republican conservative. He did an amicus
Hi,
brief.
everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is former Senator and founding member of our Republican legacy, John Danforth. Senator, thank you so much for joining me.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
It's good to be talking with you, especially today, because the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled against President Trump's tariffs on dozens of countries earlier this week. They said that he exceeded his authority in imposing tariffs. And less than 24 hours after that ruling, a second federal court also struck down the tariffs. You joined in amicus brief to the legal challenge on President Trump's tariffs. So first of all, what is your reaction to the news?
Well, I mean, to me, it's obvious. I'm sure there are arguments on the other side, but this really is a constitutional question. And it relates to, fundamental civics, what we learned in grade school, the separation of powers and what powers are given by the Constitution to Congress, what powers to the executive and to the judiciary. And it's very clear in the Constitution that the power to tax is a congressional power, and also the power to regulate international trade is a congressional power. So our position is that the president has usurped a power that is reserved by the Constitution for Congress and has taken it upon himself to impose just unilaterally, without any real process at all, a massive tax increase on the American people, and a massive intervention in the global marketplace with regard to international trade. So it's our position that the court is correct. This will eventually go to the Supreme Court, almost certain about that. And again, I think our position is very strong.
Senator, I know that you said that you think that you're almost certain, rather, that this is going to make its way to the Supreme Court. How do you think it's going to go there? I mean, based on what we know about those 9 justices, any indication of which way they would rule should it go before them?
Well, I just think the wording of the Constitution is very clear. And for the conservative justices on the court who are very interested in the meaning of the words of the Constitution and sticking to those words, I don't see how they can escape the fact that the taxing power is reserved to Congress, not to the president unilaterally. Same with regulation of international trade. So the president is purporting to do by executive order what should go through the legislative process. So I would think that this would be a good case in the Supreme Court as far as our side is concerned, but who knows?
And the Trump administration has already filed an appeal. And the director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, he said a couple of things today that I want to get your reaction on. First, he said that he believes fully this will be overturned. What do you make of that?
He believes what will be overturned? The injunction?
Yes.
I don't understand how that could happen unless it would be on some procedural grounds. But on the merits of the case, I think that the Constitution is very clear. I mean, these aren't implied powers. These are express powers in our Constitution given to Congress. And with regard to taxation, there's even a specific process that tax bills have to initiate in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and this is where the normal interpretation should be thereof. But nonetheless, we've seen the Supreme Court, Alito et al., and to bend things in a different way and give the administrative branch, which is the White House, too much power. So we'll just see what happens here. But as you've seen here and as has been noted, it still has to go through the court process, appeal process. Whether the order to set aside the tariffs ends up being back into play because of the merits of the case is going to be a bit of a stretch. It'll be interesting to see how this Supreme Court rules, and that's where we're sitting. So now you're up to date. Now you know what's going on. So the tariffs were unlawful and illegal and were set aside by court order, and now they've been appealed. So the court order has been stayed until there's a judicial review. So this is where we're at. So just more monkey business on behalf of Trump et al. Trying to be a dictator. What can you do? Putin's got to be loving this. So that's where we're at. Any questions, comments? Please, by all means, throw in chat and send a love and peace to everybody. And ciao for now. When we get further updates, we'll let you know. Thanks for watching.